Hello and welcome back to the channel. So today I thought I just finished filming another video, and now I'm gonna do one kind of in the same realm. The last one I just filmed was I don't know if it's live yet or not, but it's about 20, best and worst purchases I made in my 20s. And so in the same kind of vein, I would like to do this video, just me having a coffee and chatting with you guys, real talk about what it's like to be a woman in today's society in your 20s. I have a lot of thoughts about this. Me and my other 20-something female friends often talk about this a lot. Like, it's one of the main things we talk about, actually, to be honest with you, because it's such a, I think, difficult time for women in particular, being in your 20s. So I got all prepared with my coffee here. My third coffee of the day. I'm kind of a coffee addict. And I just want to get into it with you guys. So this is not supposed to be like a woe is me, like, pity party about this, because honestly things aren't that bad. I mean, there's people who have it way worse off than I do. This is definitely not meant to sound like me saying I'm a victim or anything like that. It's just kind of my real thoughts and feelings, I guess, about being in my 20s. And some of these things that I want to talk about are things maybe I'm not personally struggling with, but I know some of my friends are. So I'm taking their experiences as well as my own experiences to kind of make this video. And I really want this to, like, encourage maybe some kind of discussion in the comments about how you guys feel about it. If you are currently in your 20s, if you're older and, like, looking back on it, if you can relate to any of this, if things are different now than they used to be, or just any of that, like anything somewhat related, just put it in the comments, because that would be awesome to see. So how do I even start this topic? It's hard. So I think your 20s for everyone is kind of the time when you're supposed to sort of figure your shit out. Like, you're finished college usually by your early 20s. Like, I think I graduated, unless you're doing like extra schooling, you know, but most people do like a 4-year or a 5-year program or something like that after high school, and then they're done their post-secondary education by the time they're like around 22, 23, something like that. And for those that don't even go to university or college, like, they're already out in the working world by the time they're in their 20s. But I think your 20s is really the time that you're supposed to figure out what you're doing with your life and really kind of nail down, like, a path for your career, a path for your family life. Like, a lot of different pegs have to fall in place in your 20s. And I think because women are the ones who have to, like, have the babies, it just adds additional pressure for women in particular to really get everything locked down and everything ready for, by the time they reach the end of their 20s, they really have to have certain things, or they feel as though they really have to have certain things done and in place. And I know this has definitely been something that I've felt for sure, like, throughout my 20s. I'm still in my 20s. I'm 27, so I'm, you know, I still have a few years left. But I think it's hard because I think a lot of people have different priorities than the other people around them. Like, for example, I have always really prioritized my family, or future family. I don't have any children yet. But I guess one of the things I mainly focused on after college was getting things in place so that I would be ready to start a family by the time I was, like, around 30. And for me, that was even later than I thought. Like, back when I was, like, a teenager, I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have kids by the time I'm 25 and blah blah blah. And then like, you live your real life and you're like, wow, that was unrealistic. So I think it's important that girls in their early 20s, I would say, like, by the time you're in college, if you want to have a family, just to be aware of the risks associated with having a high-risk pregnancy, which is like when you're over 35. So back when I was, like, in my early 20s and, like, late teens, I thought, wow, like, 35, That's so far from now. Like, I don't have to worry about that. I mean, I'm obviously gonna have kids way before then. And it's like, it's one of those things you just kind of like don't have a realistic idea about when you're in your early 20s. And that's really when you need to be realistic about it, because if you're going to be able to achieve all these things by the time you want to, so before 35, ideally. And if you don't want to do this before you're 35, that's totally fine too. Like, I'm not shaming people who wait until they're 35 plus to like have children. I have friends that are like, one of Jeff's best friends, his wife they have 2 children now, and she didn't have her firstborn until she was, I don't know, 36 or something like that. So, and they're both healthy, and like there's obviously situations where it can work, but I think that people do need to be aware though that if they are going to wait that late, there are risks. I mean, there is a higher chance of a lot of different kinds of birth defects and things like that. So if that's something you're concerned about and you want to have a family before that age, you really need to start getting serious about who you're dating when you're like in your early 20s. Because if you really play it out in your mind, if you think about it, like when you start dating somebody, I mean, chances are it's not going to get serious, like really serious, like you're engaged, until you've been dating for a few years. And like for me, it went a little bit differently because Jeff and I got engaged after we were only dating for 6 months, but that's not typical. I would say most people I know date their boyfriend for 3 to 5 years before they get engaged. And then when they get engaged, they want to plan out a nice wedding. So that usually takes another year and a half. And so now you're about 4 to 6 years into being with the person. So before you're even married. And I'm assuming, again, that you would want to be married before you have children. I know there are people that do it a different way. Again, not shaming those people. But I think a lot of people, the majority of people I've spoken to, like in a perfect world, want to do the marriage thing first and then have children. If it works a different way, that's totally fine. Obviously, things happen and life's unpredictable in that sense. But I'm just following the pattern of what most people are sort of looking at for their life plan. So it takes about 5 to 6 years of being with a person before you're actually married to them, usually. And if you meet that person when you're, say, 22, then you're looking at 28 by the time you're like married to the person, if you met them when you're 22. So I don't know about you guys, but like, I don't know. I was lucky being able to meet the right guy when I was 20. I just turned 23 when Jeff and I met. But that was like lucky, I feel like. I know a lot of my peers when I was 28. I mean, I'm not even 28 now. What am I saying? When I was 23, a lot of my peers when I was 23 were still like messing around with like not super great guys, and they knew they weren't the right guys. They knew they were like just the guy of the week, you know, flavor of the week, kind of a boyfriend, just a fun thing and whatever. It wasn't serious and stuff. And I just think by the time you're 20, you know, in your 20s, like really the earlier you start thinking this way, the better, I think. Once you hit 20, 22, 23, 24, if you're really pushing it, 25 even, like 25 is like absolute latest in my opinion to start being serious about who you're dating. Like, don't date guys that you know are like a short-term fling, that are not right for you, and you know they're not right for you, and you're just dating them because it's fun or because there's no one else around. Like, you're never gonna meet the right guy if you're just wasting your time with the wrong guy. And I think the sooner you start dating with intention of marriage, if that's what you want, the better, and the sooner it is you're gonna find the right guy. Because once I started dating with that mindset, I didn't waste my time anymore on guys that were not marriage material. So like I would go out with a guy a couple of times, and you can usually tell kind of right away, like there's a few like red flags where you're like, this is not going to work out. But usually, like, you know, you kind of stick it out because you like the guy and you keep seeing him, and then you like him more, and then you end up wasting a year of your life dating him. And it's just like, if you just cut ties right away, when you right away know it's not gonna be a serious thing, you kind of save yourself a lot of time and heartbreak. Oh, my camera is out of focus. There we go. Yeah, so that's one thing. I think it's totally different too for women and men, because women are on that biological clock. Like, men have time. So this doesn't really apply to men, I guess, because they kind of can do whatever. Unfortunately, they can like wait until they're 50 if they want to get married. So it's not really like huge rush for them to like have children and get married like early. But I just think it's one thing that I wish more people talked about and more people expressed to younger women in their late teens, early 20s, that like dating can be fun and silly and who cares where it goes and all that stuff when you're like a teenager. But you really have to start, if you want to have a family one day and a marriage, you really have to start thinking more practically about who you're dating once you reach your 20s. So this is good and bad. I mean, obviously it's going to help if you want to get married, like it'll help you find the right guy, but it's also like you have to say no to a lot of really fun guys that like you know are not right for you, but you're just like, you really are into them and you really like hanging out with them, and you know. So there's that. And then there's just the amount of time it takes usually for guys to propose, the amount of time it takes to plan a wedding, and then after that it's like now you're in your late 20s probably, and you are already feeling insane amounts of pressure to like have a baby before you're too old and stuff like that. And it's unfortunate because that's just kind of the way society is nowadays, that post-secondary is like very common, and that really eats into a lot of productive time in your late teens and early 20s, and then before you know it you're like almost 30 and you're like, well, better push out a baby now, and it just gets very stressful when you reach like near the end of your 20s. And like I said, I'm 27, so I'm getting to the finish line of my 20s. And my friends, like, I feel very blessed and lucky that I'm in the position that I'm in, which is that I am married and that I do have a house, because those are the two things I really wanted to have happen before I had a child. More so the married thing, because I feel like the house thing, that can wait a little longer. Like, I know people that have had a baby when they're still renting in an apartment, and you know, it's not ideal obviously, but it's fine. Like, it's not like the end of the world. I think having a partner that's committed to you and gonna stick around is like, and you know, has legally and publicly promised in front of all of your friends and family and in front of God, if they believe in God, and in front of the law, that they are in it for the long haul and they're going to help you through it no matter what, and are really ready to go for it with you for the rest of their life. I think that's way more important personally to me before deciding to have a child with somebody, because once you have a child with somebody, like, you I don't know because I don't have children, but from what I've heard, you really are going to need both parents to really make it through that. Like, it's pretty rough. So like, you can get by in an apartment. It's less of a big deal than like getting by on your own. You know what I mean? Some people do it. Some people have to do it. They have no choice to do it. And for those people, like, I am honestly, like, this is not at all to bash them in any way. In fact, it's almost the opposite. Like, I am in awe of single moms who can do it on their own, because I just know that personally, like, I don't know if I would have the strength. And like, I mean, maybe in the circumstances where like I was thrust into that circumstance and, you know, you make it work, you have a child, but like, it just blows my mind how strong some of these women are that do it by themselves, because I feel like that is so hard. That must be so hard, and I like honestly commend them for doing it. This is not at all for me to say that they're not doing it right, or, you know, whatever. There's no right way and wrong way. There's just, you know. Anyway, I just wanted to say that and make that clear, because I don't want it to come across like I'm being preachy or like you have to be married if you have a kid or anything like that. I just think I've always lived by the motto of like, plan for the best. Wait, is that how it goes? Yeah, hope for the best and plan for the worst. So obviously this is my sort of hoping for the best would be the being married part and blah, 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 blah. But like, some of the strongest women I know out there they did hope for the best, but the best, you know, they ended up in the situation they ended up in, and they planned for the worst, and they don't necessarily have it the worst. I wouldn't say they have it the worst by any means, but like they're making it work, and they're doing more than I ever could. So anyway, let's end that tangent. I just want to make it clear. I don't want anyone to feel like I don't want to offend anybody with what I'm saying here. It's just, this is just really a personal thing that I feel like that's what I wanted before I had children, was to be married and hopefully have a house. And I have actually gotten there thanks mostly to Jeff, because I mean, there's no way we would be able to afford a house without him. There's no way, you know, I wouldn't be married without my other half. But there's a lot of pressure to be where I'm at, or even beyond. Like, I don't have children yet, and there's a lot of pressure by society to like have a child already by the time you're 27 years old. And it takes like, it's very hard, like as a woman in your 20s, to like deal with that, especially when something like getting married and stuff like that is something you can't force that to happen. Like, it's not like a one person decision where you can be like, yep, I think tomorrow I'm gonna decide I'm gonna be married. Like, you have to, it's a joint decision, obviously. So yeah, I'm not gonna get into too much about some of my friends' experiences in terms of like, I'm not going to tell you who I'm talking about or anything like that, just for their privacy and whatnot. But like, I have lots of friends who are not yet married, and they wish they were, or they're you know, my age, and they're struggling like to save for a house and like things like this. And it really does, there really is this sense of like a timeline that can be very defeating if you're not where you want to be at by the time you're 30. And I think for women especially, again, 30 is like a big age where it's like, if you haven't done A, B, C, D, E by the time you turn 30, you screwed up. And like, I don't think that's necessarily healthy, but at the same time, I think completely throwing the timeline out the window and being like, well, I can have a baby when I'm 45, that's not really healthy either, because like, it just physically, biologically isn't healthy, like for you or the baby. So yeah, this is just kind of me venting about how frustrating it is to have so many financial obligations, so many social obligations, so many things that you're supposed to have done by the time you're 30 as a woman in society today, that are just, it feels like you're just running around like crazy. And I haven't even touched on career yet. So there's a whole career aspect of this. Like, a lot of people talk about how they want to have their career kind of like solidified, and they want to get to a certain ranking in their career before they have a kid, because that of course sets you back in your career life. Like, that's something I can't relate to quite as much, just because I'm self-employed. So it's not like, it's not the same kind of experience where I'd be out of the workforce and then go back to my job and feel like I missed out and I'm behind on the time. Like, I mean, I will miss out on certain things, like when I do inevitably, hopefully, if I'm lucky enough to have a baby, like miss work for that. But it's more of like, I'll be on my own sort of timeline. So like, if I have a bad year as a self-employed person, or if I take a year off to have a kid, like it's hard to explain what I mean. But point is, I think there's this false idea out there that women can and should have it all by the time they're 30. They should have a house, they should have a husband, they should have children, they should have a great career that's like all they wanted it to be, and all of this, while meanwhile still looking great and being fit and maintaining the household and being like the perfect housewife, but at the same time being the working girl. And I just think it's way too much pressure to put on anybody, and women face it so hard. Like, men have their own challenges. This is, again, not to sound like I'm just being like, oh, poor me, I'm a victim or anything. It's really not like that. Men have their own shit going on. Like, I can totally acknowledge that. I'm trying to speak to my own personal experiences here, and I feel as though society makes it seem like it's possible for you to have all those things by the time you're 30, and it's really, really not. And this is coming from somebody who really tried to do it that way and really tried to have it all. And you know what? Like, I am way behind a lot of my friends in some aspects and way ahead of them in other aspects. Like I said, I have a husband, I have a house. So some people would look at me and go, wow, like, that's great. But like, my career is still really, really in the growing stages. Like, I'm not making a decent salary yet because I prioritized finding my husband and having this house and doing all the preparations for that, that it really put my career kind of on the back seat. And I think a lot of people do it the other way around. A lot of people really prioritize their career, and it kind of puts dating and relationships, marriage, etc., on the back seat. And I just like want to say that no matter what path you kind of went down, it's fine if you're not where you thought you would be when you turn 30, because nobody is. Nobody is. I know some people who had kids when they were really young, but like, that kind of took a toll on either their career, or maybe they wanted so much to prioritize the kids thing, they ended up having kids with the wrong guy, and now they're not with the guy. And so like, it seems like no matter which path you took, no matter which goalpost you aimed for at the beginning, it's like one of the other areas really suffered. And that's true for me, that's true for most of my friends. And I just think we should stop trying to tell young women and teenage girls and stuff that it's possible that if you make all the right choices, that by the time you reach 30, you're going to have a husband, you're going to have a house, you're going to have a great career, you're going to have children if that's what you want, and everything's going to be perfect. And all it takes is that you just have to make all the right choices along the way and work hard. And no, like, it doesn't, it pretty much fucking doesn't matter, because no matter what, you probably will get some of those things if you work hard at it. I mean, it's pretty unlikely that you'd get, unless you really weren't trying, it's pretty unlikely that you'd have none of those things going for you. But unless you fell into some kind of horrible circumstances or something like that. But to have all four of those things and more, like, I mean, there's a lot of people that prioritize travel, and I haven't even touched on that because I'm really not a traveler, but like, it's just, something's got to give. And yeah, so to sum up, let's stop pretending like we're all going to be perfect people and we're all going to have it all by the time we're 30, and it'll all be locked down and everything worked out great and, you know, whatever, because no matter what, there's going to be something there that's kind of like falling behind. And it's okay to like admit that, or to say that you need help in a certain area, like, or, you know, whatever it is. So what do you guys feel like when it comes to this topic of being a 20-something? Can you relate on any of these topics? Can you relate to what I'm saying at all? Do I sound crazy? Do I sound like a whiner? Do you think I'm just one of those people that isn't trying hard enough, so that's why I'm, you know, a little far behind on the career side? I would love to hear your thoughts, because this is something that, like I said, me and my friends talk about this a lot and talk about how unfair life is. Basically just have our own little pity parties all the time. But, you know, this is just kind of like a rant video, me venting for a little bit about life is hard. But that's life, so no one said it'd be easy. So, so that's it for this video, you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed listening to that rant. And it wasn't too boring for you, and maybe you found it relatable. And, oh, that's Jeff coming in right now, so I'm going to call this one right here. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye.